Oh, hi there. Welcome back to the channel. This weekend there's literally no interesting rugby going on.
This guy's a moron.
So I thought I would take the opportunity of this weekend to go through my updated 2.0 Lions 15, as requested by Jamison Gibson-Park himself. No favouritism here, he may not even be within the team, but when a player reaches out like this, you gotta answer the call. Anyway, let's get straight into this mother. I'm gonna break this down by your typical kind of like front row, second row, back row, fly half, scrum half, centres, wings, and back three generally. Yeah, this is obviously coming off the back of the Autumn Nations, also how players are playing for their own clubs as well, as you'll see as we get into this. So yeah, without further ado, let's go straight into the front row, right? So I've gone for a front row of Andrew Porter, Dan Sheehan, and the controversial pick probably in this front three is Will Stuart. Andrew Porter to start off with, such a solid player. He's probably the best loose head available at the moment. He's playing better than anybody else, I think. I think there are some close seconds. I think Sheehan for Scotland has been really, really good. I think he could compete. I think Ellis Genge just had a bit of a resurgence of his career. Finn Baxter, after his start with England, has maybe gone off the boil a little bit. I don't think there's any Welsh players to be seen within this loose head position that can compete. So yeah, no, I think Andrew Porter at that one shirt is pretty solid. Dan Sheehan, yes, he's injured at the moment. And I really do think this is probably picking him because his talent is just much better than anybody else in the position that's available. I think Ashman maybe for Scotland, but I just don't think he's the same player that Dan Sheehan is. There's Jamie George for England. Yeah, captain, plays pretty good, but he's not the same quality. And for Wales, again, I don't think there's anybody in there that can really compete. So I think Dan Sheehan, get him healthy, get him back, and he's just a step above anybody else. On the flip side of Dan Sheehan being the best hooker there is available, I think Tadhg Furlong probably is as well, but I don't think his talent outdoes the fact that he's obviously not been playing at the moment because of injury, right? I think there's other people that's been coming in, and I think anybody that watched England in the Autumn Nations, yes, they lost every game except Japan, which does that really count? But Will Stuart, who I was not a big fan of coming into this Autumn Nations, I think had a much improved Autumn Nations. I think scrummaging was great. He was good in the loose as well. He got around. He wasn't just a glaring opportunity to take advantage of in defence, as he has been in the past, I think in the World Cup in particular. So, he's a big dude, and he's kind of a typical tight head prop. He's not going to be running around with the ball in hand as much, but he's really, really solid. And I think from a scrummaging perspective, I think you'd be hard to find someone that competes as well as he does in that tight head shirt. For Scotland, to be honest with you, I've never really been a huge fan of Xander Fagerson. For Wales, it's Henry Thomas is probably your biggest competitor in there. I don't think he's up to scratch really compared to everybody else in there. We'll know there's some time in there, but we'll see. So yeah, I think Will Stuart has an opportunity with a strong Six Nations, staying injury-free, to take that three shirt for himself, and we'll see what happens. So, on to the second rows. I don't think there's going to be any surprises for anybody in these positions here. I think there's a lot of competition for spaces, but I think there's really two people that are standouts. Joe McCarthy and Maro. So Joe McCarthy really came onto the scene for Ireland like a firebolt out of hell or whatever, right? Excuse the analogy. But he came in at 21 years old in that Six Nations last year and was just fantastic. A bit more of a muted Autumn Nations, I think, for him, compared to how he came in during the Six Nations and during those tests against South Africa as well in the summer. But I definitely think from a talent perspective, his ceiling is just so much higher than anybody else that you could be playing in this shirt. Other people that I'm thinking of here is Grant Gilchrist or Scott Cummings, but I don't think they're as good as these two. I really think Maro Itoje has a bit of a renaissance in his career in the last kind of 5 or 6 performances for himself. During all those losses for England, I think he's been a standout performer. And yeah, again, for Wales, maybe you have Daffyd Jenkins in there, who I think is a very, very good player. But again, I don't think that is a place for him. I don't think he's as good as McCarthy or Itoje. There's also arguments for George Martin and Ollie Chesham. George Martin, I don't think he had as good as an Autumn Nations as he has had previously playing for England, where I thought he's been a standout grafter player. And Ollie Chesham's obviously injured at the moment. So I think there's such a competition for those second row shirts that I just don't see him in there. James Ryan, another renaissance in his career. Great player, could see him starting in that position as well. I wouldn't be surprised if he was. A lot of competition in those two shirts. Onto the back row. So This one, I think, if you took like 10 rugby fans in a room, I think they would have 10 different combinations of who they should be going at the back row. So I don't want my selection to kind of tarnish or make me think that I think these players are like way better than the selections that are available, because I think there's plenty of really good selections in here. Without further ado, let me just name this back row selection that I've gone for and we'll talk through it, right? So blindside flanker, I've gone for Tadhg Beirne, I've gone for Caelan Doris at number 8, and I've gone for Jack Willis at number 7, right? So let me talk through these selections. Tadhg Beirne, I think, offers the ability to play second row and back row, but I think playing at 6 in the Autumn Nations, where I think Ireland have been like more like an 8 out of 10 rather than like a 9 out of 10 the last few games that they've played. But I do think Tadhg Beirne at that 6 shirt is really good. He's a hard hitter, he's mobile as well, which I think would be really good to play against Australia. There's a lot of other people that could play here. I think Jamie Ritchie is having a renaissance. I feel like I've said that word 5 times during this entire video. But again, I think he's having a comeback to form. Chandler Cunningham South could be playing 6. I don't think he's as solid and as refined as these other players that are there. Talking about 8 first before we talk about my controversial pick at 7. Caelan Doris, big dude, gets you over the gain line, and I think I'll be probably picking him as my kind of captain for this team as well. Not just because Andy Farrell is the head coach and there will be obviously that connection of him being the captain for Ireland, for Andy Farrell being the head coach. All the things that you hear about him is that he's a proper leader. You know, he gets all the guys together. I think it's kind of like a double whammy of Caelan Doris in there, right? One, very good ball carrier in terms of getting you over the gain line, has shown that in the Autumn Nations in the last few games. But I also do think that he is, you know, that guy that can kind of be the captain for the team as well. There are a lot of people that I would have considered as well in this 8 shirt that I think probably deserve a shout out. Ben Earl has been, I think, really good. Again, maybe seen a dip in form since the Six Nations. Maybe he's been figured out a little bit more, but his ball carrying is really, really good. Matt Fagerson, I think, for 8 for Scotland, could easily walk into this team as well at that 8 shirt. Again, there's just so many competitions around each of these numbers. But yeah, for me, it has to be Caelan Doris at this point. And also kind of captain of the team as well. Talking about Jack Willis at 7 then, right? So, can't play for England because he's not eligible because he's moved to France. But, I mean, I think anybody that watches Toulouse at all, especially, you know, he's playing well at the moment. He's constantly winning awards in the top 14 on a weekly basis. But, like, I'm talking about, like, those, like, quarterfinal, semi-final and final, like, performances that he had in the Champions Cup last year. And I think this weekend, right, we're going to be seeing more and more of that. I mean, he's so good. Like, ball carrying, jackling, everything. He's the superstar back rower that really could play 6, 7 or 8, right? And I think for me, does he qualify as like your uncapped player? No, he has played for England, but he's definitely kind of like outside of that international bubble. I mean, stay around to the end of the video. I'm going to talk about possible uncapped players that could be included within this squad. I just think Jack Willis is just so good. And I'm hoping that this is, I'm kind of projecting a little bit here that Jack Willis is picked within this team, starts at 7, has like 3 tests against Australia and plays amazingly. Because I just feel like it just puts the pressure on England to just welcome him back into the fold and put him in the squad and kind of bend the rules a little bit for players such of his caliber. So it is a little bit of projection. Although, to be honest with you, like, there are some great players that could go in there. Josh van der Fleer, excellent. You know, Rory Darge, very, very good. Sam Underhill even, Tommy Raffel, Jack Morgan. These are the 2 Welsh players that I think are probably the best available to this squad, right? But Jack Willis, I think, he's better than those guys. Other than maybe Josh van der Fleer. I think there's probably a bit of English favouritism with me picking Jack Willis over Josh van der Fleer, who I have to say has had an excellent Autumn Nations. But man, put Jack Willis in this team. Let's get him going, man. Scrum half, probably one of the easiest selections for me with this, Jamison Gibson-Park. I think there's only really other one scrum half that's better than him in the world, and that's Antoine Dupont, who's obviously French, who obviously can't be in this team. So, easy selection. This is also, though, I think the one position in the team that Wales can also probably get like a little bit of a nudge in. I really like Thomas Williams, who plays for Gloucester and also for Wales, obviously, because I'm talking about Welsh players. But he is also very, very good. I enjoy watching him. Very, very quick. So, Jamison Gibson-Park goes off the boil or he gets injured. Thomas Williams is probably the guy that I'd like to fill in that shirt. I think maybe Ben White goes in there. I like him as well. I think he's very good. But I think England probably have like the worst scrum halves, even though they're very good out of all kind of the home nations in that regard. what England don't have the worst of, and I've separated out these two positions because I want to talk about this position in particular. I think they have the best fly half. Kill me, sue me, shoot me, favouritism, don't care. Marcus Smith, I think, has to be fly half numero uno for this team. And it's not just like I think he's the best fly half available, it's also picking a fly half for the opposition that you're playing against. I think you're playing against Australia, where there's probably a bit more defensive gaps than there would be if you were on a British and Irish Lions tour to New Zealand or to South Africa. And who better than Marcus at taking advantage of those gaps, those small gaps that are available. Finn Russell is probably the obvious selection at 10 that I think a lot of people would go with. I don't know about you. I feel like he's kind of like slightly off the boil. I think the game against Australia, he played well, but the games leading up to it, I don't think he was like his full self. I don't know. It doesn't seem like he's like 10 out of 10 Finn Russell at the moment. I think he's more like 8 out of 10. And I feel like Marcus Smith's development over the last 2 years has just been amazing, right? As an avid Premiership rugby enjoyer, I watch Marcus Smith on a regular basis, and I've said this in previous videos, and I'll say this again. Marcus Smith was always really good prior to a year ago of being an excellent dominant fly half for 60 minutes in a game. And I think the real thing that changed for him is that he is just that superstar, excellent 10, takes control of a game for a full 80 minutes. And I think that's kind of how he's pushed himself into this England side, even though he's probably not typically a Steve Borthwick kind of fly half. I think he's just on the rise, just seeing more and more of him getting better. Looking forward to him playing for Quins. You know, maybe Quins have an upset this weekend in the Champions Cup because of him. So, yeah, I don't know. I could see Finn Russell being in there, Crowley being in there, Prendergast. You know, Prendergast could come into this. Although, as I said in my Ireland Australia video that none of you watched, but in that review video, I said that Prendergast could really just use an off-season of just bulking up over the summer to then have a longer-term, better future for himself. So a part of me for Prendergast's future wishes he isn't in this British and Irish Lions tour. But, you know, I think Crowley also has a great shout. I think he's a great fly half. I think he can compete with Finn and Marcus Smith. Obviously a very different player. And, you know, you could see him being put in there because he's kind of the same. He's like a system fly half. Excellent game manager. And you'll know how Andy Farrell will want to play the game. So a lot of swirling, as there are in all these positions, to be honest with you. But picking at me right now, Marcus Smith at 10. So let's talk about the centres. And I have gone for a full Scottish centre partnership. I've gone for Sione Tuipulotu and I've gone for Huw Jones. Sione Tuipulotu, I think, is the out-and-out 12 selection. I think he just gets better with more time that goes on. For me, he feels like he's like the perfect combination of like Manu Tuolangi and Matt Giteau in how he plays. Incredibly dexterous, excellent passer, very intelligent in terms of seeing where the ball needs to go. But when it comes down to just put the hammer down and just go and power through like small gaps, can do that too. And I don't think there's anybody better than him in the home nations for that 12 shirt. Bundy Aki is probably closest, I would say. Ollie Lawrence has started playing excellently for England, but I definitely think he's a really solid 3 out of the, like, if you pick Tuipulotu, Bundy Aki, and then 3 being Ollie Lawrence. Robbie Henshaw could probably be selected in here as well. But no, I think at 12 shirt, I think a lot of people would agree with me. Sione Tuipulotu probably has that 12 shirt on lock. Huw Jones at 13. This is probably one of my more controversial picks. Gary Ringrose, I think probably a year ago, had this 13 shirt on like lockdown in terms of how excellent he's been. But, you know, I think he had an injury and I don't think Gary Ringrose has really come back to full confidence of what he was before that injury. And I think even Irish fans would probably admit that at this point. I think this shirt could very easily swap hands to Gary Ringrose if we see a resurgence of form for himself, which he's more than capable of doing. I think, you know, peak Gary Ringrose versus peak Huw Jones. Probably pick peak Gary Ringrose, if I'm honest. But yeah, no, I think Huw Jones is excellent. I think he's a bit of a power runner. But yeah, I just think he's a better player at the moment than Gary Ringrose. Sorry, I think it's just the truth. So, getting on to the back 3. And probably some more controversial picks in here. Let me just talk through the 3 selections, right? So one wing, you got James Lowe. Another wing got Feyi-Waboso, and like that 15 shirt, you got Blair Kinghorn, right? So I think James Lowe is probably your safest pick in there. I don't really have anybody else that I would want to pick other than him. I think it's a solid pick, a great winger, super, like, just scores all the time. He has that left boot that can get you out of trouble as well. Absolute power runner, and also snipes the ball where the attacking opportunities are. So excellent wing choice. I wouldn't have any question of that. Feyi-Waboso feels like a bit of a homer pick to me. Like, maybe I'm picking him on English bias, but to be honest with you, he's you watch how defenses play him now. They look to try and either, if he gets the ball, limit the space that he's got like really, really quickly, or like just try and keep the ball away from him in the first place. You can tell, I think, that defenses are starting to like try and recognize him as a threat and realize at the moment that he has hit the ball in his hands and he has like an inch of space, he's deadly. I think a lot of that becomes like he just has a very low center of gravity, so it's very difficult to tackle, and he can also just kind of change direction on a dime piece as well. Like when you have like a combination of like excellent acceleration, difficult to tackle because you're low, and also like can also change direction. As soon as you get any space, you can just run through defenses. So, I don't know, I think he's probably earned that shirt for me for 14. There's other selections in there. I think Matt Hansen would be really cool coming in and playing 14 against Australia. Obviously, he is an Irish player, come from Australia, and he's been playing really, really well. Really well for Ireland as well. So, I think there's a whole host of people that could be playing in this wing shirt. But I just think Feyi-Waboso is just really, really good. Duhan van der Merwe, another Darcy Graham, Yeah, there's tons of people that could be playing in this wing shirt. I just think Feyi-Waboso, he's got the potential to be better than all of them. And, we'll see what happens with the selection. Finally, at fullback, Blair Kinghorn. Blair Kinghorn came in after Stuart Hogg retired just before the World Cup. Played excellently, I think, for Scotland in the World Cup. And then early in last season moved to Toulouse and kept Thomas Ramos out of that 15 shirt. Kept playing 15, or they would put him on the wing and Ramos would play 15, or Ramos would play 10 when Pneumatic was injured at fly half. And I just think he's gone from strength to strength ever since that move to Toulouse. I think he's the best fullback available. Hugo Keenan's obviously very, very good. A lot of people put George Furbank in that 15 shirt. Yeah, I could see it. I don't think Freddie Stewart, I don't think he's earned that 15 shirt, and, I don't think Wales have a good enough fullback to be competing in there either. But Blair Kinghorn, for me, I think, has played excellently ever since that move to Toulouse. And before that, when he was kind of brought in as the emergency 15 for Stuart Hogg leaving the squad, I think he's been great. It's not just counter-attacking at the right areas and finding the right lines from that 15 shirt and attacking the line at interesting opportunities. It's not just that. It's about his kicking as well, positioning in defence, being just an excellent kind of like goalkeeper for that back line. A really, really good player. And, you get a chance to watch him play for Scotland, Toulouse. Always a joy to watch. So that's my 15. Let me know in the comments. I'm sure everyone at this stage has got, and they probably will all the way through to the actual first test, second test. They'll have a whole host of different selections. So I'd love to hear who you think we should be playing in these 1 to 15 jerseys. Now at the end, I'm just going to use this as an opportunity to talk about possible zero cap players that could be coming in from what I can see. So I'm going to say it's fully biased because of what I watch on a regular basis. In terms of what I watch rugby-wise, domestically, my priority list is like Premiership, then URC, then top 14. So it's definitely biased in that regard. I'm only going to really be talking about English players for you guys to watch out. I know there's probably a lot of people that watch in the URC, for example, maybe not a huge amount of top 14 guys out there. But yeah, these players, I think, from England have a real chance to kind of get in this kind of uncapped player that the Lions always have. So I'm just going to list them out. Will Evans, Gabriel Ogre, and Gabriel Ibitoye, right? I think all three of those have been excellent. I've talked about Ibitoye and Ogre and that they should have been within the Autumn Nations squad for Steve Borthwick's side in 2024 this year, but they weren't. Ibitoye is just so dangerous. And, you guys that don't watch the Premiership on a regular basis and you watch your other teams in the URC or the top 14, I think he could have a really big game against Leinster when Bristol play Leinster on Saturday. I think it's on Saturday. It might be Sunday. My point being is that, you know, both these players are really, really excellent. And I think this Bristol game against Leinster could be a lot closer than people think it's going to be. So I say that, and therefore Leinster will win by about 20 points, right? Will Evans also for Harlequins at 7. Excellent jackler, does so much graph work. And I think he's just an unfortunate player because he's playing 7 at the moment when England have so many good kind of back row options. And as a final kind of English signature off of this, wouldn't it be fun if Joe Marler was called out of retirement for a final Lions tour? Never going to happen, you know, never going to happen. But I just thought that would be a fun little thing to sign off with. So, yeah, that's it. Let me know what you would do differently with your teams, how you think things would develop differently. Yeah, catch you all in the next one.